There's a watch in this video that costs $21. It's plastic. It looks like something you'd win at a fairground. And there are people who own Rolexes and Omegas who put it on to mow the lawn, and then keep wearing it for the rest of the weekend. That's the thing about cheap Casios. They're embarrassing right up until you understand what's actually inside them, and then they stop being embarrassing and start being slightly insulting to everything else in your drawer. Because these aren't watches that got cheap by cutting corners. They got cheap because Casio built them decades ago, never had to redesign them, and has been making the same thing so long that the tooling paid for itself before most of you were born. Here are 5 Casios so cheap they're genuinely embarrassing to admit you own, and the reason not one of them will ever die on you. Let's start. Number 5. The Casio MQ24. Around $15. Let's be honest about what this looks like on a shelf. It looks like nothing. It's a plain black analog watch with a resin case, no branding worth noticing, no complications, and a dial that says almost nothing at all. It's the watch in the drugstore display next to the reading glasses. Nobody has ever pointed at one and asked what it was. If you wore this into a room full of watch people, not one of them would look twice. Here's the thing though. Look at it properly. And I mean actually look at it, not glance at it in a display case. The case is thin. The proportions are small, in a way the entire watch industry spent 20 years running away from and has only just started coming back to. The dial is clean. The hands are simple. There's nothing on it fighting for your attention. That's not an accident of budget. That's what happens when a design has been in production so long that every unnecessary thing has already been removed. The people who design genuinely expensive watches spend enormous effort on exactly this. Knowing what to leave out. Resisting the urge to add a date window, a texture, a second color. The ones who get it right end up with something that looks inevitable. The MQ24 gets there for $15, and it gets there because there was never anything to add. Now, compare that to what the fashion brands charge. $150 gets you a name on the dial, a bigger case, a quartz movement of similar accuracy, and a watch that will look dated in 4 years because it was designed to look like a specific year. The MQ24 doesn't look like any year. It'll still look right in 2040, and by then, it'll have cost you $15 total. Number 4, the Casio calculator watch. Around $25. Now this one is genuinely embarrassing, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. A calculator on your wrist. Tiny rubber buttons you have to press with a fingernail. It is the single most effective way to communicate to a room that you were not popular in school, and it has been that way for 40 years. You will be laughed at. That's not a risk, it's a certainty. Here's the thing. Every single one of those tiny buttons is a hole in the case. 40-odd separate points where a watch is supposed to fail. Where moisture gets in, where dirt collects, where the seal breaks down over a decade of pressing. And they don't fail. Casio has been building this module since the early 80s, and the reason it survives is that they solved the sealing problem once, correctly, and then stopped changing it. The membrane under those buttons is the same solution they've been manufacturing for 4 decades. There is no version 2. There was never a need for one. Think about what that means. Most products get cheaper by getting worse. This got cheaper by being made the same way for 40 years. While the machinery paid for itself, the failure modes got found and fixed, and the price of the components collapsed. You are buying a design that has been debugged by tens of millions of units in the field. And there's a detail nobody mentions. The calculator works, not as a novelty. It actually does arithmetic, on your wrist, without a battery you'll ever have to think about, which is more genuine utility than most complications costing 4 figures deliver. The chronograph on a luxury watch gets used roughly never. This gets used at the till when you're splitting a bill. Number 3, the Casio A158wa. Under $50. This is the one that gets you the most confusing reaction, because it doesn't look cheap. It looks fake. Chrome-plated case. Steel 3-link bracelet. A tiny square digital display. From across a room, it reads as a proper metal watch, And up close, it reads as a proper metal watch that somebody clearly did not pay much for. And that combination makes people suspicious in a way that plastic never does. Nobody thinks a plastic Casio is pretending. This one looks like it might be. Here's the thing, it isn't pretending, and the bracelet is where you can tell. Pick one up. There's a weight to the links that has no business existing at this price. It's not a hollow form strap that flexes when you squeeze it. It's a tapered 3-link bracelet with actual material in it. And it's the reason this watch has a small cult following among people who own much better things. The case is 33 millimeters and change, which is the size the watch industry decided was too small around 2005 and has spent the last 5 years apologizing for. It sits flat, it doesn't catch on a cuff, and it looks correct on a wrist rather than parked on top of one. Inside, the same 7-year battery as the rest of the range, and a module that has been in production since 1989. Now, compare it to a fashion watch at 10 times the money. You'll get a bigger case, worse proportions, a hollow bracelet that rattles, and a name that means nothing to anyone who knows watches. There is a specific pleasure in wearing something nobody can price by looking at it. You know what it cost. Nobody else does. And a warning worth taking seriously. This model and its close relatives are among the most counterfeited watches in the world, precisely because they look like metal and cost nothing. Buy from Casio directly or from a seller shipping Casio stock. A fake will die, and then people will tell you Casios are rubbish. Number 2. The Casio MDV 106 Duro. Around $50 to $60. Now, here's the embarrassing part, and it's the opposite of the last 3. This one doesn't look cheap at all. It looks like a proper dive watch, steel case, rotating bezel, clean dial, 44 millimeters of genuine tool watch presence. Put it on, and people assume it costs several $100s. The embarrassment is admitting what you actually paid. $50. And watching somebody's face do something complicated when you tell them. Here's the thing, and this is where it stops being a bargain and starts being an argument. 200 meters of water resistance. Not the 50-meter splash rating most watches at this price hide behind. 200, which is the same figure printed on dive watches costing 20 times more. And it gets there properly. Screw down crown, screw down case back. Those are the 2 things that actually keep water out under pressure, and they are the 2 things budget watches skip first because they cost money to machine. Casio didn't skip them. On a $50 watch, the movement is rated at plus or minus 20 seconds a month, which is tighter than Casio's own standard specification and comfortably better than a mechanical watch costing several thousand. And the battery lasts 3 years. Ask any experienced collector to name the best value in watches under $100, and a startling number of them say this one without hesitating, not as a joke, as the answer. And here's the comparison that makes people uncomfortable. Every year, a microbrand launches a dive watch at $250 and gets compared to this. Every year, the comparison goes the same way. The expensive one gives you a sapphire crystal, a better bracelet, and a name. And everything that actually keeps the water out is doing an identical job on both. This is the watch that goes on for yard work, for the beach, for anywhere the good watch isn't going. And the pattern among owners is consistent enough to be funny. They reach for it far more than they meant to. Number 1. The Casio F91W. Around $21, and here it is. The most embarrassing watch on this list, and the one I'd defend hardest. $21. Plastic case, plastic strap, a little digital display, and a shape so recognizable it's basically a logo. It weighs 21 grams. You genuinely forget it's on. It's 8.5 millimeters thick. The case is 35 millimeters across. It looks like a school watch because for millions of people, it was one. Here's the thing. Casio has been building this exact watch since 1989. Not a successor. Not a modernized version. The same watch, continuously, for well over 3 decades. Which means every failure mode it could ever have was found and fixed before most people watching this were born. The battery lasts 7 years. Read that again, because the industry has trained you not to notice it. 7 years in a $21 watch, in a module that also runs a stopwatch, a daily alarm, an hourly chime, and an auto calendar. There's a mechanical watch in a shop window, right now costing $4,000, that needs servicing every 5 years at several hundred a time. This one asks nothing of you for 7, and then costs you a few dollars for a sell. One honest caveat, because I'm not going to oversell it. The water resistance is 3 atmospheres. Rain is fine, washing your hands is fine. Swimming is not. If you want water, that's what number 2 is for. But here's what actually earns it the top spot. There is an enormous modification community built around this watch. People fitting metal cases, custom straps, different bezels, turning a $21 Casio into something genuinely personal. That community exists for exactly one reason. The base watch is so cheap and so reliable that experimenting with it costs nothing and risks nothing. You cannot say that about anything else you can buy. And the final point, which is the whole video in one line. Every watch on this list is still in active production right now. Not resurrected as a heritage reissue. Not remade as a limited edition at 10 times the price. Still being built on the original design, at the original kind of money. The industry keeps telling you that quality costs more. Casio has spent 37 years quietly disproving it with a plastic watch that costs less than lunch. Look at what these 5 have in common, because it isn't the price. Not one of them is cheap because a corner was cut. They're cheap because the design was finished decades ago. The tooling has long since paid for itself, and Casio never needed to redesign something that already worked. Everything else in the watch industry has to justify a new model every year. These don't, and that's exactly why they outlast the things that do. So tell me in the comments, which of these do you actually own? And be honest about whether you hide it. If this was useful, hit like and subscribe. And if you want the other side of this, the video on the expensive watches that dealers genuinely cannot sell is on the channel.